My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. And a big thank you once again to Eukanuba. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020 is what we feed our dogs here at the kennel. And a big thank you to them because this podcast would not be possible without them. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020. Also thank you to Sitka Gear. We have been decked out in Sitka head to toe today, and we started off in a little chilly morning to very warm temperatures to rain, and we stayed comfortable the entire time. And so we thank Sitka for that. If you guys want to check out any of their premium products, www.sitkagear.com, and I would do so quickly because season is here. Gun Dog Supply, your one-stop shop for all of your training and hunting needs. Thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Great people, great company, great customer service. You just can't say enough good things about them. So www.gundogsupply.com. And also thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck has, I'm sitting here looking at 4 or 5 Lucky Duck kennels right now. We love them. They are 5-star crash test rated. They are safe. They are easy to maneuver, easy to bring in and out from the truck into the garage. They've been great. www.luckyduck.com. All right, season is here, and we could not be more excited about this. This is what we work for this all year long, and sometimes it's hard, to kind of keep that in mind as you're kind of going through the daily grind of the training season, and it's a go summer, but there's always something calming about September 1st. It kind of feels like we're here. And I am currently in Kansas. I'll tell you about what I'm doing down here. But this is what I do, or what I have done now for, this will be my 4th year in a row. And I'm down here for Dove Opener. And I want to tell you guys why this is so special to me, because this is a very, very special trip. So, growing up, I didn't dove hunt. I'm from Wisconsin. We don't have a whole lot of dove. Didn't really trip my trigger. Didn't really understand why all my buddies in Texas geeked out over this so much. And, it just wasn't anything that I was interested in. And a few years ago, I had a client that would talk about this and talk about why he loves doing this, and that client quickly became a very close friend. So his name is John McCulley, and John, I trained his first dog probably almost 10 years ago, and ever since then our relationship has grown. He has gotten I've trained 2 more dogs for him in that time. Ginny, who is a little French Brittany, who obviously didn't come, from us, and then Sprig, who is a Brock and Sage puppy, who's just a phenomenal little pup. And obviously, the more dogs that he has had, the more we stay in contact, the more our relationship grows. He invited me down to hunt. He lives in Iowa, and I've shot my biggest archery deer to date on his property. Scored 190 and 7/8, and just an absolute stud. Things that most business relationships aren't, right? And what has been with John has been nothing more. I shouldn't say nothing more, but it's a friendship. It's more than, is what I guess I meant to say, more than a client, your relationship. It's a friendship. And so as our relationship grew, he invited me down here to Kansas and said, you got to come do dove season. I thought, okay, well, I've never done this before, but we do a lot together, and it's a real relationship thing. And yeah, I'll go with you. I'll skip early goose season in Wisconsin, which is something I always look forward to. And I was like, I'll come down here. And I had more fun on that trip than a lot of hunting trips that I'd been on. And it's not because the shooting, although we shoot a lot, it has everything to do with how relaxed this is. I mean, this is super laid back. We have more laughs, than anything else. And it's such a great way to ease my dogs into the season. My dogs would hit the ground running, in early goose season with, inevitably, because all my buddies are jacked up for season to start, we'd have a 12 to 14, guys shoot on early season honkers, and it'd be a mess. And of course, whoever was running the other dog, was breaking and out of control. And so I'm sitting there having to, look at my dogs and make sure that they're going to stay, under control as they should. And it just seemed to be a little more stressful than what it should be to start the season. This is the complete opposite. This has been calm, laid back, enjoyable. And I think I have enjoyed working my dogs down here so much more as I ease into the season. It's just it's such a great breath of fresh air, and so I love that. And then from that, other clients that John has actually met, I'll tell you about them. So his son JR is here, who he has 2 dogs that I've trained, and then Kent, who has 3, and it's just so funny how this has grown. Well, and so Kent and John never knew each other until they got their dogs from us, and they were at Pheasant Fest, and they both happened to meet up and talk to me at the same time at the show. Well, then they introduced themselves to each other. They start talking. All of a sudden, they're hunting in Iowa together for pheasants. They love chasing pheasants. Chasing pheasants in South Dakota 2-3 times a year, and then now Kent, this is his first year doing this trip, and it is so hard for me not to just sit back and smile as I look down this dove field line and I see client, friend, and all these dogs that I've worked with really solidifying and being the glue of that bond. And it is really, really, really neat. So that's what I'm doing right now. And we're actually hunkered in the garage because I'm trying to wait out a rainstorm. We got rained on earlier today. And tonight, hopefully we can get back out and shoot a couple more birds for the dogs, because we did not limit out this morning with that rain that pushed us out. But we had a great morning regardless. And this year is even more special to me because Whitney is here. And for those of you who don't know, Whitney is my wife, and she is the glue of Riverstone Kennels, especially when it comes to the breeding program. That is her baby, and she runs that top to bottom. And this is her first dove hunt, and so I've been telling her for years that she has to come down and see this. And she's done everything else. She's duck hunted, she's goose hunted, she's killed bigger deer than most people with her bow. She's done everything except dove, basically. And so first off, Whitney,
yes,
thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me on here again.
So as we sit here in the garage, and we're sitting right next to the dogs, so they're kind of hanging out and chilling from the morning's hunt. I wanted to bring you in here and just kind of talk a little bit through. First off, it was so fun for me to watch you this morning. I could tell that you were enjoying it and you were having fun, and it was laid back. But you brought a dog, and I want to talk about that dog. I want to talk about what you thought this morning. I want to talk about Some different things that happened this morning. But the first thing I want to start off with is, what did you think? I haven't asked you that yet since we got in. What did you think of today, your first dove hunt?
Yeah. I loved it. I love how relaxed it is. I love that we can sit and talk and laugh and just have a good time. And it was just easy, laid back. The dogs had a blast. We had a blast. We like to make a little game out of it. Who can shoot more doves in the morning? And it was awesome. I can't wait to go back out again.
It's if you've never done it, you have to dove hunt and I would do it with friends because it is so much more relaxed. I don't know if it's because there's something about setting out all the decoys and the calling and everything that goes into waterfowl hunting that you want those birds to finish really badly, but you don't have that with dove. You're not brushing in blinds, or at least we don't. But it's just different. And so I don't think it's something that I would want to do all season long. But I think that there's a lot of really, cool pieces about it. It's a great way to kick it off.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so of this morning then, what was your favorite part of the morning?
My favorite part of the entire morning was watching everything come together in Purdy's little mind. Like watching her go out for that first retrieve. She has never had a dove in her mouth. And you could tell she was unsure of what she was looking for when I sent her out on the retrieve. She got it. She brought it back, and it was a great retrieve. But then you watched her go out on that second retrieve, and everything came together. I mean, it was flawless, and that was so cool because this is like the first time that I've brought my own dog, been able to work my own dog, and like go through that process, just me and Purdy. It was really, really cool.
So that was one of my favorite parts of the morning, but probably my favorite part was your third bird that you killed. And the reason I say that is because I saw the same progression you did. I saw, Purdy knew what she was doing from her training and her experience in the past. She went out, but you could tell I felt like she had looked at where that dove was and kind of kept moving and came back to it and picked that bird up. The second retrieve was, way more, she got in that area and boom, picked that bird right up. But the third bird that you killed, first off, was an awesome shot. That was that really hard right to left, fast swinging. You made a beautiful shot on it. And you looked back because now Purdy had two retrieves in a row, and I also had Strike and Brock out. And you looked back real quick, and I think you were going to ask, do you want to send one of the boys, because Purdy had gotten two in a row. And when you did that, I looked down at Purdy, and Purdy was, she was sitting there zoned in. Like, it just seemed like it had all clicked, right? Like, that was where she knew it. And that's why I was like, well, no, you got to send her, because that was like that reward of she's understanding this whole thing. Let her go pick that one up. And so it was really fun to watch that progression. You could see all the work that you put in with her over the summer. Maybe that was something, I don't know, did you feel that while you were in the field? Like, was that some sort of pride as you kind of went through that first hunt?
Yeah, I would say yes, it was, but you can never replicate the real thing. And so there's the training side that came together, and then there was the whole hunting side that came together. And, like, I came into it, honestly, like a little nervous bringing her because you do all this training and, like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I know what we have together. It should translate into the field, but what if it doesn't? And that's where my mind always goes. I'm like, but what if? And just to see all of that came together in the field on this hunt was just super cool and something I'll never forget.
Yeah, no, it's definitely fun to watch. And for me, it's fun to watch it from a different perspective, because usually I'm the one that's bringing the new dog in the field and trying to feel out how it's going to go. And so it's so fun to watch it from a different perspective than what I normally am in. So we're talking about Purdy. Let's talk about Purdy, because I would say that she's an exception to the rule in so many ways of how we normally would, one, bring a dog in from overseas, two, how we would go through their first hunting season, because this is her first hunting season with us. Very different. I preach, especially on here, all the time of why I think those first seasons should be sat out and the benefits of that. And knowing that a lot of you out there are not going to listen to me on this, totally get it. It's funny, especially going back to Game Fair. I had so many people that just kind of sheepishly be like, it's a first year, but I'm gonna hunt her, and I know that you say not to, and it's not a golden rule. It's just my opinion, and so but I want to talk about why this is different, with her. Also from a breeding standpoint, so we've had a litter from her. Again, very abnormal from what we normally do. We normally bring them in, give them at least a year, to really understand who they are, right? And for me to train with them and see what they have. She was different in that way, and so. Let's talk about Purdy and why she was different. And so, background on Purdy. I don't know if you want to talk about it. Go ahead.
You can explain it better than I can. You
Well,
you do the background thing, and then I'll do once we brought her over. Okay.
Okay. We should have planned this out before we started talking, but we never plan these. That's what I love about this. We don't sit down and plan it out. Okay. So Purdy. Purdy was from a breeding that was very interesting to me. And when I was overseas, I guess it would be one of the last times now with COVID. It feels like it's been forever. I had gotten the opportunity to watch dogs that her father, I guess, run, and it was one of these opportunities that I talked with one of my very close friends overseas, and I said, if there's ever the opportunity. For a dog out of these lines, I like what I'm seeing. So he called me. How old is Purdy?
2.
So would have been 2 years ago. He called me and he's like, Josh, there's a litter coming. I think you'd be really interested. Is from these dogs, and I think that we could probably get a puppy. I said, okay, that sounds great. And he said, but what would you think about me holding on to her and using her to compete with, because I have an older dog that is going to be probably moving towards retirement. I want to have a young dog to run a novice, and I think it'd probably be a good fit. And so for me, I was in a situation at the time for sure that we had too many dogs. We had Ava, who our daughter, who was just born not too long before that. Just a lot going on. I was like, man, that would actually be great, because you could tell me what she's like. You can work with her, kind of bring her up with the anticipation of competing with her. And if you wanted to compete with her, great, and go as far as you'd want to with her. And then whenever you think she's ready or she's done, or you have a new dog, then we'll bring her over and she'll be a part of our family. So, it was a great plan. So we bought her. Got her with her friend, and that was what he did. He raised her, started training with her, would keep us posted all the time. We got photos and videos all the time of her. She was growing up. It was really fun to watch.
We even got to name her.
Yeah, we got to, because he wanted to name her Biscuit, and we didn't like Biscuit a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so we went with Purdy. Wasn't there another name we were thinking about?
Well, I really like the name Birdie. And you were like, let's do something a little different. So then we compromised on Purdy.
Right. And so Purdy, we go through COVID. Really what happened was COVID.
Yeah.
So we go through, that COVID time, and COVID was just at the time that Purdy was going to start competing, and she was going to start going into her trials. We were really excited about it. But it shut everything down, and especially over in the UK. I mean, it shut everything down. I mean, we here in the States were way back to what you'd consider normal, way sooner than our friends overseas, where it's just kind of crazy how different it was. And so with Purdy, we just had to make a call. We just said, you know what? I mean, she's. How old was she at the time that we brought her over?
She had just turned 2.
Okay, so she had just turned 2.
Yeah.
no trials for the foreseeable future, and we had a tremendously difficult time getting dogs in during this time from overseas. And the opportunity just arose where it's like, look, let's get her here. We know we're getting, so I think we got one or two dogs, over at the same time.
Yep.
And it was like, let's just get her here because,
well, there were a lot of factors into it. Like the airlines were still shut down. And it was like, you either get her on the flight this week or who knows when you're even going to be able to get her over.
Right. Well, and looking back on it, we could have later on. But at the time, there's so much uncertainty. I mean, with, none of us expected COVID, let alone everything, the repercussions that came of it. So there's just so much uncertainty that we're like, hey, let's just get her. But we got her here after, there had been quite a bit of training done. I mean, our friends did a great job working with her, kept us up to date through everything, strengths and weaknesses, what she was doing, what she wasn't doing. They even had, there was specifically a young girl, she was probably 15, 16 years old, that was in love with Purdy, learning how to handle a dog, using her. I loved everything that I had seen. And I think what's even more important is that, I have spent time at their house with them, training, knowing them very, very deeply. Same here, they've come here, they stayed at our house, trained at our facility, spent a lot of time with us, so we know what each other are looking for. And so we get Purdy here. Purdy's already gone through a shooting season.
Yeah.
Purdy's already gone through a lot of training. Purdy's already gone through the health tests.
Yeah.
She's already gone through everything that we needed. And so I think that's important to talk about here because that is why the approach with Purdy was so different. This was not a dog that we were getting, we knew nothing about. This was not a dog that we felt like we had to, feel out. This was a dog that we really, virtually felt like we knew her from the day she was 8 weeks old on. And, so, from your point of view, now we have Purdy here, go.
Okay. So, I'm going to go kind of back to a little bit of the breeding side of things with Purdy. So, we brought her here and it's a little bit different than importing a sire because a sire you can breed for a long, long time. And since we already knew Purdy, we knew her genetics, we knew a type of a temperament she had, we decided to go ahead and breed her on her first heat cycle over here. And this is where Josh and I actually kind of have some fun when we're deciding who we're going to breed them to because we couldn't decide who we wanted to breed Purdy to. It was either going to be to Clyde or to Bud. And they're two very different dogs. I was leaning a little bit more towards Bud because I honestly didn't want a litter of all yellow because I didn't need that. I needed more of a mixed litter. And so what was really, really cool is we called our friend and the one who had raised Purdy, and we actually asked him for his input as well. And we wanted to know, he knows Bud and Clyde. He obviously knows Purdy. And so we were like, these are who we're going between. This is why. Why don't you make the ultimate decision for us? Because you have known her longer than we have. So I think it's cool to hear that background on how much input we have on our breeding program with who we're breeding each sire and dam to. And honestly, as you can tell, it does not come down to color. It comes down to the temperaments and genetics. So from there, we bred Purdy with Clyde. They were phenomenal puppies, but within that breeding, her going through her pregnancy with me, whelping out the litter, I raised her puppies with her. Her and I created this extreme bond, like probably a bigger bond than any other dog that we have ever owned. Like she's like my girl, my glue. She's right by my side. If she knows where I am, she's there. And so that's why it was really important for me to bring her on this trip because it's like, it's my first dove trip. It's her first hunting season over here. Let's like really kick off this hunting season with a big bang together. The last 2 hunting seasons, I've either had a newborn baby or pregnant. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be my year to really get back out in the field hunting. So I would start just by normal work with her. I needed to make sure that her and I were on the same page with obedience. We knew the same commands. I needed to make sure she was going to be 100% steady with me. I needed to see what type of a retrieve she had, how natural her retrieve was, especially with the dove, because they are such a small bird. And if she was not going to be doing a great job at retrieving small birds, this was not going to be a good hunt to bring her on. And obviously, having Brock and Strike here, she knew them. And so it wasn't like we were throwing her in with two dogs that she didn't know. We have been working on steadiness with these other dogs. And so I was like, okay, I think she has every single thing that she needs to prove to me that we can go and do this hunt together. Knowing that at the same time, we would also have your guidance. And I would have no problem if it was like, you know what, this is too overwhelming for her. I would have had no problem putting her back in the crate in the truck and just saying, okay, Purdy, you know what? We came out and now we know what we have to work on. But instead, she killed it. She did great.
Yeah, she did do great. But I think when I look at the progression that you did here over the summer, what was so neat to me is that I've never seen you dig into training as much with her, as I did with her. Like, you were into it. You focused on her. You looked at her weak points. How can we build her up? I mean, you trained. I mean, this was a training day for her.
Yeah.
Because she was sitting right next to two dogs that she sits next to every day while we train, right? We make each other honor each other all the time. This was nothing new to her. And I think even though you said you're kind of feeling some of that stuff out, right, with the retrieve and the steadiness and all that stuff, I mean, we knew that she had it. We knew that she had it before. Now it's, is she going to apply it with you, especially having gone through that? The biggest part of her relationship with you was the puppy side of things. So it's not the discipline. It's not you asking her to work. It's not the things that from a working dog standpoint, that you're asking her to do. And so that's what I think. There was no doubt in my mind. Like, we knew she had it. We knew she had the discipline. We knew she had the work. We knew she had that stuff. Now it's transferring it to you. Yeah. And can you handle her? And can you work with her? And are you guys a good team? Which she certainly checked all those boxes. And then today to watch to go apply it. It's for me it looked like, I relate so much to sports. It was the high school kid that had all this hype and like all these great things, that coaches were saying about this kid, and then like it's finally game time. Do you live up to it or not? And she did, and she stepped up to the plate, and I thought she did fantastic, even though there were a lot of hurdles. We had a herd of cattle run through our decoys today, and I mean, stuff that some dogs would just get nervous about.
I was nervous about it.
I know, I don't know why, but it was really, really neat to watch that. And I think you bring a very unique perspective to this because she is your girl. I mean, there is no question about it. You guys connected. You guys go everywhere together. You guys do everything. Where today I had Brock and Strike, and I think the other thing about those two was that I knew they weren't going to do something stupid. Yeah. At least I was very confident that they weren't. They weren't going to be breaking. They weren't going to be challenging each other. They weren't going to be edgy. And I think that helped too. She sat next to everybody that was being calm and quiet and chill, and it's just easier to be calm and quiet and chill when you're with that that energy. So,
and hang on one second. Maybe it was more. I knew she had it, but I also proved it to myself that I could go out and I could handle her. And I could read her and read the situation. You know what I mean? Like, maybe that was more of my nerves more than anything. And I wasn't looking at myself. I was just so focused on Purdy and making sure she was okay and doing everything right rather than focusing on my own handling skills with her.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. So I guess the last thing I want to ask you is, and then I have something I want to touch on because it's kind of some Instagram messages have sparked this conversation for me. But the question I have for you is, so from everything you saw today, as you go into tomorrow or this afternoon, if God's willing to let the rain break here for a little bit, we can get back out. When you take her out next, Is there anything that you saw this morning that you're like, you know what? I'm either going to build on this or I'm going to work on this? Or like, does your mindset change from what you saw today leading into the next hunt?
It's a great question. I don't know if my mindset has really changed. I'm definitely going to go into it a lot more confident. You know, like, okay, we got the first one under our belt. We really grew in that first hunt together. And now I think we're both going to walk in confident because now we have that foundation. Okay. And it's like, maybe something to work on is marking the birds a little bit better so I can point her in a more accurate direction. Not that it was absurd or anything, you know, I mean, we did a good job, but just if I'm going to be really nitpicky on it, I would say one thing that I need to do is make sure that I really mark these down birds to continue to set Purdy up for success for that great retrieve there and back.
Which is easier said than done if you've never hunted doves before. These are not, there's something, I don't know if it's because, I'm sure it's because of the size, but the depth perception is just, I always think they're twice as far as what they actually are. And sometimes I'm even surprised by some of the retrieves when the dogs snap around and, you know, pick a bird up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought that was another 15 yards. But yeah, I think that's a great point. You know, that there's on both sides, right? So there's stuff that, you know, you want to see her do, and then, you know, there's stuff that, you know, maybe we can do, you know, to help that improvement. Yeah, I think one thing that we could do is try to find maybe like a cut crop field or something like that, you know, would maybe be an easier way for her to mark. You know, we were in very brushy stuff today, and brushy stuff that all looked very similar. Like there weren't real defined landmarks, or there wasn't, you know, things, you know, that stuck out to you that to mark a bird. It made it very difficult. Yeah. And if it's difficult on us, it's sure difficult on a young dog learning the game. And so, yeah, I would agree. I think that's a great point. I think it's something that that we can all, you know, think about as we move in and evaluate each hunt for what they are and move forward and we progress, right? So enjoy the process, right? So I love all that. Appreciate you going over the Purdy stuff, and you can jump in on some of this, you know, this point if you want to. But I want to spend just a minute here, and I want to talk about corrections in the field. Okay, corrections in the field. And the reason I want to talk about that is during our first hunt, which was yesterday, the day before Whitney got here, we had our first hunt, and I thought it was an awesome hunt. You know, not only bird-wise, but the dogs did fantastic. And so Clyde is actually handling for another gentleman that's here because he got to handle Clyde a couple years ago when his dog got hurt, fell in love with Clyde, and now every year, you know, he calls me and asks if he can run Clyde, which is great because it's just more retrieves for Clyde, you know, for me, and one less dog I have to handle, so it's great. But it was out with Clyde, and then I was handling Brock, and you know, it was a great hunt. It was really hot. I actually was really paying close attention to the dogs, giving them a bunch of water, you know, just making sure that we're getting too warm. And it's early morning. We were limited out by 7:40. You know, so it's not like we're hunting in 95 degrees, but, you know, we're in Wisconsin. We're not used to the heat. And it just, like, you could tell the dogs were getting warm. So I had a scene in my Instagram story where I filmed us walking out. And it was me, and it was Clyde next to me, and it was Brock next to him. We were just heeling out. And now, this is the part you don't see, is that while I'm filming this, I'm juggling my gun, my bucket with birds and empty shells and everything else, my blind bag. You know, I'm trying to juggle all this stuff as I'm coming out the field. I'm trying to, you know, film with one so that I can bring it to everybody, you know, like you, that likes to follow along with all this stuff. And I had a comment from somebody that said, because when we were healing, you know, Brock was, I mean, it was like a half step ahead of Clyde. And, yeah, now I was in 0.5, you know, view on my camera just so, you know, you could actually see both of them. And so it probably looked a little more magnified than it actually was. But that half step ahead, of Clyde, who's at a perfect heel from me. And the comment was, why aren't you correcting Brock for being ahead? So honestly, quite honestly, the first thought that went through my head is, this is it. This is why, as I've talked about in the past, nobody puts anything that's not perfect on social media. This is why. Like, why do I want to answer a question like that? I mean, to me, he is perfect. He is under control. He is maybe a half step ahead of Clyde, but he's healing to Clyde, right? Like, he's under control. He's hot. He just had a fantastic day. He's doing everything right. He's under control. If I stop, he stops. Like, what more could I ask of him, right? And so a little excited. Well, it's what bothers me, right? Because like in the worst way, I want to put the blunders on social media. I want to put like the train wrecks. I want to put all this stuff. But you're gonna get just lit up by people who they think that this world should be perfect, and it's just not how it works. There was nothing wrong with that. He was completely under control. He had just had a great day. Why would I want to correct him there for something that he doesn't like? He doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. He is under control, right where he should be. And so let me just kind of tell you here in a quick way. For me, if I were to make that correction, let's just say I'm like, you know what, you're a half step ahead. I'm going to make a correction, on this. I make that correction. What happens? Well, he's going to get nervous because he thinks he's doing it right. Then he's going to try to suck right into me. Okay. Well, then Clyde's going to get bumped out of the way, think that something's going on, or he's going to suck back into me. And now we've got a mess on our hands because they both think something's wrong when really nothing was. And this is where I just think we strive for perfection all the time. I'm guilty. I'm probably one of the guiltiest at it, especially when I talk about training, striving for perfection. But the reason I strive for perfection is because I know it's not going to be perfect. I know it's not going to be perfect, especially when we get into the field. And when we get into the field, I want as close to perfect as I can because I know that should I be worried about you're a half step ahead? I mean, not even a full step is how minute this was. A half step ahead. Like, is that worth correcting? Is that worth getting after him for, especially after we just had a great day? We should be smiles. We should end this on a positive note. We should be going into, back to the house here and thinking that was the best morning ever. Why would I end that on a bad note just for that? And I know I'm going to have somebody out there that says, it should be perfect. And you should make that correction. You should make all this stuff. But especially circumstance, I'm like, let's take the fact that I didn't have a free hand out of the equation. So I couldn't have made a correction, quite frankly. But let's just take that out of the equation. Communication-wise, he is under control. He is right where he should be, a hair ahead. He is hot. He has done everything right today. I just think this is where we get into trouble. We start making corrections and we start confusing our dogs, especially because you get into the field, into the hunt, nothing's controlled anymore. Everything is controlled when you're trained. That's why we can make those minute corrections, and that's why we can be successful with those minute corrections, right? But you start getting into. Oh, we have. If you guys can hear, I don't know if you hear the whimpering in the background. We have one of our dogs that is currently dreaming and whimpering while they're dreaming. Where I'm going with this is that I just think there's a time and place for correction, right? And I just feel like when everything has gone right and the situation doesn't call for it, has to be that. If you think there's going to be confusion that's added here, okay, just like whining. I have more messages coming in right now asking for help with their dogs whining or being vocal in the blind, especially after yesterday because it's the first day in the field. Don't correct that. Like, it's just like we've talked about before. Like, I don't think you can correct it. I think it is genetics, and I think that the more opportunity the dogs have to do it, the worse it's going to get. Okay, but you getting frustrated and either smacking them on the nose or hitting them on the collar or whatever you're doing like that, like the dogs are not going to get it. And it's probably going to amplify it or make it worse, right? And I understand that especially if you're hunting with your buddies, there's this temptation of like you want your dog to be perfect and stuff's going wrong, it's embarrassing and everything else. It's just there's time and place for correction. If you're going to confuse your dog by correction, it is not worth correcting. Time and place, just, it's not going to be, I'm going to bust your bubble right now. It is not going to be perfect. But you can sure enjoy it. I enjoyed every bit. And so I apologize if you're the person out there that asked me that question. This is nothing against you. I'm not going after you, but it does kind of trip my trigger on, I'm so critical on everyone that puts everything so perfect on social media. Mm-hmm. But then I also know that this is why, that I understand that there's always someone out there that's looking to cause an issue. There's looking to stir the pot. There's looking to poke. And I understand that that's tough. I wish I could find a way. I wish I could find a way to do it. And I wish I could just say, I don't care. I'm just gonna show it all. But if the worst thing that happened yesterday was Brock being a half step ahead, and not even of me, of Clyde, he was next to, healing 2 dogs on one side. If that was the worst thing that happened yesterday, that was a pretty dang good day. So, anyway, I've been extremely happy. Recap, I've been extremely happy of Brock, extremely happy of Clyde, extremely happy of Strike. Like, all these guys have knocked it out of the park. They've handled it well. They have made the last couple of days extremely enjoyable for everyone that has been around them. I could not be prouder of them. And then Purdy. Could not be prouder of Purdy. So I love that Whitney is here. I love that she was able to come on this with me and talk with you guys. And I hope that you all are able to get out and enjoy some of this early season activity as we are, and use it as that early season hunting / late season training. Use it to kind of figure out what you have to fix to go through the rest of the fall. It is a great opportunity. If you have never dove hunted, go pick yourself up a couple dove decoys. They're not very expensive. Go do this. It is a blast. You will enjoy it. It was a great sit down and great episode. So we are going to go. I'm going to go shoot my bow because I have my first Spot and Stock Aoudad trip here coming up next week, which I'm super, super, super excited about. And then I'm going from there to South Texas for teal opener. And Whitney is going home to be with our babies.
Little kiddos.
And so
and all my puppies.
And all your puppies.
Yep.
Yeah. You have a full plate at home. That's for sure.
Yep.
That's for sure.
And get Bracken ready for pheasant hunting.
Yeah, which we'll talk about here hopefully sometime soon.
We will.
So I'm going to go shoot.
Okay.
Thank you guys for spending this time with us, and we will keep you posted on how the season's going. So thank you for spending the time, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See you later.
See ya. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.